Okay, so we'll get the meeting started, and then Xavier Mendez, Councilman Mendez is in the parking lot, walking in here soon. And so all members are present, and we'll get the council workshop started. And Ed, do you want to do the introduction, or go for it, Ed?
All right, he doesn't need any introduction. David
Well, I don't
Turch
know.
from David Turch Associates is here today to make a presentation
Maybe
to the
there's something
council
different about him.
regarding the activities in Washington, D.C. and his perceptions.
Okay, Mr. Turch, I can limit you to 5 minutes, or you can talk how long you want. What's your option?
Oh my gosh, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and citizens of my favorite client city, always delighted to be with you. As you know, ordinarily I have prepared about 40 to 46 minutes of scintillating and incisive comments. Tonight, there'll be about 4. That's about what I can tell you what I know is happening in Washington. Let me start off by saying that I'm not a sports person of any way, shape, or form, except I happen to be a very intense baseball fan. Let me put it this way. I have the seats at the Nats Stadium immediately behind the owner. The owner's in row 1. I'm immediately behind him. So I want to congratulate Los Angeles and the Dodgers. All the years I've watched baseball, I do believe this may well be the best World Series in the history of the game. You think about it, just a couple of errors. The errors had no impact really on the outcome of the games. Terrific plays. Everyone played just the way some stuff works out. You know, the beauty of baseball is like my occupation. You fail most of the time. You're a hero if you only fail a little more than 2/3 of the time. It's lessons to be learned about life. So in any event, congratulations on the Dodgers win. I can tell you on the first couple of games, I was not assured of that at all. I thought this was going to be a 4-game series. I do know in Washington, we believe that the Dodgers have the best, at least starting pitchers money can possibly buy. Turned out some were better than others, but that's how it came out. So congratulations to the entire LA area and your backing of the blue. I want to talk tonight a little bit about a follow-up of some comments that I made to you a year ago when I thought that the outcome of that election would dictate an America that you would live in 2 years that would be markedly different than the America in which you lived last year. I was not so prescient by saying it would take 2 years. It's really been hardly more than a year, and I can't tell you how different Washington is. So let me touch on that a little bit, and so much is speculation, and we're trying to feel our way around.
And David, before you go, bring the mic down a little bit. Bring that down a little bit. Okay, try that. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Are you having trouble hearing me? I could start at the beginning. I mean, I'm prepared at any time to drag this out. In any event, let me start a little bit about one of the basic things that the Congress has to do is to pass what you think of as the budget, but it's not really the budget. It's the discretionary appropriations bills, and that accounts for only a part of the federal budget. Remember what I say, and I'll have to review these because they're a couple of years old. If you eliminated the entire federal government except for Social Security, the Defense Department, and Medicaid, Medicare, you would still run a deficit. Got rid of everything else. So end of the story is we're talking about appropriations that then funds the discretionary part of the budget. That would include defense, but not Social Security or Medicare, which are just kind of in the law. We're in a government shutdown because we can't do our job. The fiscal year closes at midnight at the end of September every year. And the government cannot function going forward. without money to pay salaries and do all the other things the federal government is responsible for after that time. And we're approaching the longest shutdown we've had in some time right now. There were some rumors today I was picking up basically on the phone on the plane. There is the beginning of some members beginning to talk to each other. But I can tell you as of last Friday, I don't believe that was occurring. And maybe it was waiting for the results of the election to kind of see where the mood of the country is. But a little bit, we know where the mood of the country is. I saw a poll this morning that 68% of Americans do not believe the Democratic Party represents their best interests. Wow. Well, let me try the other side. 61% of Americans believe the Republican Party does not represent their best interests. 2/3 of Americans think this political system is not working in their interest. So we're in a lockdown. Maybe we'll come out of it after the election to see what the mood of the country is. But the mood of the country doesn't seem to be very well defined in terms of what they're looking for, except the ordinary things of safety, stability, and economic prosperity. And they just don't think we're getting there. Maybe we're going to begin some consultation. It's not occurring, to the best of my knowledge, from the White House, which I think is absolutely instrumental in reaching an agreement. And it's not occurring with the leadership, to the best of my knowledge, or wasn't at least as of yesterday afternoon. Seems that some mid-level people are beginning to talk by and by within the parties. We'll see where it might go. Hopefully, we're not going to have the end of the shutdown in the next day or two or three, maybe by the end of the week. I think in part the elections are going to determine that. Let me talk about the elections in a moment because they're mattering to Washington. I think if there's anything I could talk about, that the direction, the mood of America, if it's defined properly, will dictate some activity and some action that we're going to take in DC. What'll the mood be? Well, we're kind of at each other's throats. I mean, you're there in California, as so many other progressive states. My own state of Virginia, I'll use it as an example. I was going to talk about your Prop 50. Well, the whole idea of things like jungle primaries and whatever, and for all of their disadvantages, we've said, you know, the problem with gerrymandering is that we've taken away from minorities, and now I don't mean minorities in terms of how we think of them ordinarily. I'm talking about ideological and philosophical and political minorities. If you're a Republican in a solid Democratic district, you really don't have much to say, and vice versa. If you're a Democrat in a solid Republican district, you don't have much. You can go vote if you want to. What's the point? Well, the end is, in several places, like California and my own state of Virginia, we've had citizens' commissions devise the new political boundaries. So we've kind of abandoned that, beginning with Texas and followed by some other states, as we've looked not to exercise necessarily the good of the nation, although maybe that if you believe so firmly in your position without compromise, that your position is absolutely right for the nation, then maybe power is the only thing that matters to you. You have it or you don't. So you can save the nation, or it goes to hell in a handbasket, depending. Let me talk about Virginia a little bit. Your Prop 50 may well reduce, should it pass, and then I think there's some follow-up action to that. But let me talk about Virginia. As a result, now we've had a citizens commission, 15 people. It's divided up. And we've divided congressional districts in Virginia are now 11. We have 11 members. They're 6 and 5. If this proposition passes, the idea is we'll do away with 3 of the Republican districts. it'll become 9-2. And the way we're going, this is the extent that's happening in our nation today. The General Assembly of Virginia met last week in an emergency session to pass a bill that would cause an election to overturn that commission only until 2030. It passed. The Dems controlled by one vote, I think, the Assembly in Virginia. Now, under the Virginia rules, there has to be an intervening election, and it has to pass the Assembly twice. So we're having a General Assembly, the entire General Assembly, but not the Senate, is up for election tomorrow. That's the intervening election. So next week, the Assembly can meet again, pass the same resolution. It's now gone through an election, pass the Assembly twice, and can go to the citizens for a vote in the spring. But instead of addressing our problems, we're talking about just power. And if one side makes an attempt at grabbing power, you're inclined to do the same thing. And instead of addressing maybe what we think are more compromising situations, that's where we are as a nation. And that kind of brings me to the last point, that our job as your advocates in Washington used to be kind of coordinating with the executive branch, but really working with the legislative branch. So we had things like earmarks. We don't know if earmarks are going to survive or not. Depends on the CR. We'll do a CR. By the way, we're talking about a CR now. Even within the individual caucuses, there's a division because the appropriators are inclined to pass their appropriations bills as bills. They're not looking at continued or omnibus legislation. Remember, by passing the CR, the government is now being run by appropriations bills we passed for 2024. We do it again, we could still be operating on 2024 legislation. So the appropriators are very inclined to pass appropriations bills. They're doing a continuing resolution. The talk now is from the appropriators, we'd like to do this in early or mid-December, not later. From some of the caucuses, we'd like to put it off until at least mid-January and maybe well into the spring. And then you could wind up with an omnibus, which I suppose, being one of the kings of earmarks over many years, you know, I just hope that we get appropriations bills, because so often in the omnibus, the all earmarks just get wiped out because they weren't the earmark that would appear in fiscal 26 wasn't part of the 24 bill. It's just a technicality, but we all lose because of it. So the long and short is, I wish I had a lot more to tell you. It is now necessary for us to almost promote your projects independently in the executive branch, as well as we do the ordinary work in the legislative branch. But appealing to the executive branch is far different than it used to be. The people aren't the same. The institutions are not the same. I addressed that a little bit earlier when I said a year ago, the America in which you live in 2 years will be markedly different than the America you lived in last year. And now, folks, the America you live in tonight is different than the America you lived in last year. And we see it so dramatically and so vividly in Washington when we're doing things so different, and we're still having to check all the boxes and do all the ordinary work. But now things are fluid and, let's say, more transactional than they have been in the past, and less in terms of institutional knowledge and history and just forbearance going into the future. I've taken up more than my 4 minutes, but you know, I've been known to engage in what do they call those long-winded speeches? Oh, I wouldn't be guilty of that. But in any event, if you have any questions before you hear the eloquent words of Mr. Jones, who I understand is going to be with us by video or telephone or some magic thing that happens in today's America, happy to answer any questions you might have, or we can wait till Mr. Jones is finished. and then you can ask him the questions.
Let's have Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, are you there?
Yes,
There
Mr.
he
Mayor,
is.
can you hear me?
I love to hear that voice. How you doing, Mr.
Hello,
Jones?
Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join David and you guys tonight. I'm apologize for not being there in person, but I'm here and I'm there in spirit. Uh, David mentioned earmarks, and that's sort of the focus of what I would like to sort of talk about. What earmarks are otherwise known as community project funding in the House, and of course the Senate has to call it something else. They call it congressionally designated spending. God forbid they should agree on just calling it earmarks, but earmarks is no longer an acceptable term, so we have to use this other terminology. Earlier this year, the city staff and I worked together and submitted several funding requests to your congressional delegation, to Representative Torres and to Senators Adam Schiff and Alex Padilla. The end result of that work was that Representative Torres secured $850,000 for the city of Montclair's fire department tractor tiller truck acquisition in the Transportation HUD Appropriations Act under the Economic Development Initiative account. The primary purpose of the tiller truck is to bolster the department's effectiveness in responding to structural fires, particularly in multi-story buildings. The extended reach of the aerial ladder enables firefighters to access upper levels for rescue and firefighting operations. Additionally, the truck's enhanced maneuverability allows it to navigate tight corners and obstacles, promoting quicker and more efficient deployment during emergencies. And thanks to the city's work and the Congressman Torres supported that request. So that's in the House Transportation Appropriations Bill, pending further work on the appropriations bill that David talked about. On the Senate side, Senator Adam Schiff secured $1 million for the City of Montclair's Community Park Project in the FY26 Transportation HUD Appropriations Bill, their version of the bill, under what they call the HUD's Community Development Fund account. Also, it's such another term for Economic Development Initiative. And the beauty of the EDI account and the Community Development Fund account is that there is no local match requirements. So any money that the city secures through the appropriations process can be devoted directly to the projects without having to commit additional city resources. Obviously, it's your prerogative to put additional money, and I think the overall cost of these two projects would require some additional local match. Now, for the park, the city proposes developing a 2.42 acre community park on land that was previously used as a police department impound lot. The new park will feature ecological and educational elements, native landscaping with interpretive signage, along with amenities to accommodate a variety of active and passive recreational uses, including a walking promenade, playground equipment, fitness stations, picnic tables with shade structures, and quiet areas for reading and reflection. Again, there's $1 million on the Senate side in the what we call the THUD bill, and so those are pending funding, depending on if and when Congress actually completes the FY26 appropriations process. And as David mentioned, Chairman Cole of the Appropriations Committee has recently made some optimistic comments about that he thinks that the appropriation bills, or at least a number of them, including the Transportation HUD Appropriations Bill, can be completed before the end of the year. So we'll have to see how all this plays out. Obviously, a lot of this, most of it is all tied to whether or not the Republicans in the House and Senate and the Democrats can reach an agreement on reopening the government. So hopefully that will come soon. I wanted to take this opportunity to sort of give a shout out to your Director of Economic Development, Mikey Fuentes, who put these projects together. He did a remarkable job of putting these projects and packaging them in a way that made sense to both the House member that represents the city as well as to the senators. Representative Torres has requested that the projects that we submitted to her office only go to her office. And then, so we had two separate requests going in, one to the House and one to the Senate. And you've gotten two earmarks, which is really a testament to your staff. And I think I just wanted to compliment both Mikey as well as his staff in putting this together. Again, even though the FY26 appropriations process is not complete yet, we're going to have to start moving forward on thinking about how to proceed with the FY27 appropriations process, which begins in earnest early next year. And so obviously there's going to be the appropriations cycle, but there is also going to be the reauthorization of the surface transportation bill, which expires next year. And that's where you can ask for larger sums of money for basic transportation infrastructure projects like the Central Avenue renovation project. So I'll be working with the city staff on that. There clearly the council and the city and the city staff may come up with other projects that you would like to submit as well, but there'll be opportunities to submit that to both to Representative Torres and to Senators Schiff and Padilla, who both sit on the Environment and Public Works Committee, the committee that has jurisdiction over these projects and these project requests. So, that's the next step that we're going to be taking as we move forward in the next 8 to 10 weeks in preparation for the next round of earmarks, even though the current round is not complete. So, I don't want to belabor the issue regarding the shutdown. I mean, clearly there's a lot going on. We're closing in onto the 5th week of the shutdown. There's a lot of pressure on both the House, on both the Republicans and Democrats from different vantage points to begin to end this stalemate, and hopefully that will happen sooner than later. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. Again, I would encourage the cities to entertain coming to Washington, D.C. I know earlier this year was an aberration because you had the Trump administration coming in, and you had Elon Musk with the Doge Committee sort of running through various agencies and dismantling programs and doing reduction in force where large numbers of federal employees were being either laid off or taking early retirement offers. And that really was somewhat dysfunctional in how these agencies and programs were being administered. So, and I think David alluded to that earlier. And one of the issues that we're dealing with now is how to navigate this new reality under the second Trump administration. But I would encourage city council members to entertain coming early next year. The process, at least the earmark process, is usually front-loaded. That means that, we have to submit the city's request to your congressional delegation, and sometime usually in March, maybe late February, March, and then the Senate maybe in early April. And so, again, the time frame would be any time from February to maybe through April, where it would be, I think, helpful and advantageous to the city to to entertain coming to Washington on an advocacy trip, not only just to meet with your congressional delegation to advocate for these project requests, but to also meet with various agencies that administer programs of interest to the city. I'm
thank you
more than
very much.
happy to entertain any questions you may have. If you have some really difficult questions, please ask David.
No, okay. Well, great, thank you very much, Jamie. I'll start with Councilmember Buru. With questions. Bill?
It's not so much a question, but an observation. Perhaps in another era, and it's not a blanket indictment, we had members of Congress who were more mature and were adults. We can look at the era of Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill. They didn't always get along, but they're able to meet with each other, talk to each other, get things done that were good for the country. Closer to Congress and Senate, Bob Dole, the Republican, George McGovern, the Democrat, worked together on many issues, but one of their hallmark issues was the creation of the food stamp program. These two men got things done. Closer to home, we know David Dreyer, the Republican, Grace Napolitano, the Democrat, good friends. And I know David and most of you up here knew them. We knew them well. They were able to get a lot of good things done, transportation, infrastructure, especially water. Issues important and critical, not just to California, but to the nation. They did it by coming together and reasoning. Some of you will remember the days of Jerry Lewis, Republican, represented San Bernardino County along with George Brown, the Democrat. They worked together and got a lot of things done. Jerry Lewis was, in many ways, one of the kings of earmarks, didn't shy away from it. He said, I'm bringing back your money to the district. In fact, one of his very famous quotes is that there are only three types of Congress members: Democrats, Republicans, and appropriators. He said, I'm glad to be the latter. They worked with both sides of the aisle. I'm finding this new era very difficult because it seems that we're little children playing in a sandbox. It's my side or your side. It's what I want and only what I want. We used to be able to come together and reason. And I think we need to find ways to start doing that because we're in peril. I look at the fact that many families in this city are hungry. Hunger doesn't know a partisan divide. It doesn't know a political party. It just knows hunger. And we're gutting food stamps and SNAP programs that help people. And many of the people on these programs are actually working. They actually work for a living. They just don't make enough to buy food. When you look at this, a statistic came out recently that with food stamps, it costs the average taxpayer on their taxes at the end of the year 73 cents. SNAP benefits, 72 cents. Subsidies to large corporations, over $800 a year. I'd rather take the 73 cents and put it where it needs to be put. I think it's time we, all of us, whatever side we're on, started to grow up and look at this and say, our country's in peril. If we can't come up with a budget, we can't come up with a continuing resolution. We are supposed to be the greatest democracy in the world, and yet we can't come together on this. What else can we come together on? I've been through the process, I know, and that's just my observation. Thank you.
Councilmember Lopez.
Dave and Jamie, thank you for being here. Even though you're boomed in from the atmosphere, Jamie, wherever you might be, it's good to have you.
Thank you.
You touched on, David, your comments about, you mentioned the jungle primary. And then you mentioned Prop 50 and then gerrymandering and these states making a mid-decade attempt at redrawing the lines for whatever the majority party in that respective state is to benefit them. I will say for us in California, I've never been a fan of the jungle primary. It was a backroom shady deal as a result of a budget deal under the Schwarzenegger administration that Abel Maldonado agreed to sell himself out and give the vote up in exchange for this jungle primary. And we're seeing the negative effects of it in California because they claim that the jungle primary would bring the more moderate, balanced approach to our congressional, state Senate, state assembly districts, and U.S. Senate as well, and gubernatorial or statewide races. And what you're finding is that the fringes on both the right and the left are nominating candidates in these primaries and getting them in the top two at the expense of one other party. And so you're seeing in this state some of the more fringe candidates getting congressional seats. Latifah, I forgot the last name, up in Oakland would be a prime example here in California. That said, though, I think we need to have a balanced approach to elections. And I don't think gerrymandering is the way to go. In Jamie's comments, you stated that we were successful. I believe you said the House, through Congresswoman Torres's efforts, was able to secure some earmarks, and then in the Senate version of their appropriations, we were able to secure some earmarks as well. Given that no budget has been passed, and we've had either CRs, temporary spending mechanisms passed, but not a budget, and being that one was passed by the House and one was passed by the Senate, are those respective bills or those respective earmarks being held, or are we guaranteed those funds? That's my first question.
Depends upon whether or not we pass appropriations bills, and it depends upon the terms and conditions of what in the end would be an omnibus as opposed to a continuing resolution for another year. It's a technicality, so there's no good answer. They could remain, they might not.
Because we still haven't, I believe, well, let me step back a minute. We did get, I believe, what, 1 or 2 million for Saratoga? What was that a couple of years ago? 1.5?
2 million.
2 million, thank you. And we still haven't gotten that because when the Department of Government Efficiency was implemented, all that spending was put on hold. So my next question is, do you have any indication, any insight as to when those dollars that were previously earmarked for cities or any entity, could be special districts, when, is there any hope or is there any calendar by which those funds will be released? And then if those are going to be held, isn't it safe to say that the money we just got, the earmarks that you mentioned, are going to be withheld as well? I mean, what are the tangible chances of us actually seeing that those checks come through is what I'm kind of getting at.
So if I may, the money for Saratoga, the city has received the funds.
We
for
did get
Saratoga.
it?
Yeah, that is committed.
Okay, good. So the other earmarks then,
The answer is there's no good answer to it. And as I tried to allude to a little bit earlier, the executive branch of the government now is not as, in part, institutionalized or as dependable for procedures as it used to be. So we're spending an awful lot of time, in part, just being downtown, and things are not as ordered programmatically as they are transactionally, if that helps to answer it a little bit. So the rules are less clear. The people who have administered these programs in past years and have the institutional knowledge are not always present about the peculiarities of the programs themselves. In the end, we don't know, except we're going to continue to work very hard to make sure that one way or the other, earmarks or through a grant or however, you wind up with the money. That's our job.
and I appreciate that, and I appreciate everything you've done on behalf of us of Montclair there in DC.
And Mr. Jones, if you're still there, thank you for doing all the work for that. You've just assumed a new obligation.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Mr. Mayor, since normally I write and take notes, and I get all my questions down, but I'm having to rely on my memory and my brain. So there's a couple points that are eluding me at the moment. Since I can't write, I case anybody wants to know. I managed to fracture the forearm, the bone that connects the forearm to the wrist. It completely severed it in two. So I've been in a lot of pain, and so I can't write. There's a lot that I can't do, and I'm kind of not taking for granted the minor things that you can do when you have two arms. So if I might, Mr. Mayor, if another point comes to mind,
Okay.
I may hit my
I
button
understood.
again.
Just, don't watch any more council, USC Notre Dame games and, So,
And if I may further elaborate in responding to Councilmember Lopez's question. So the city did receive the commitment of the $2 million for Saratoga Park. We received a $1 million commitment for the Trans Center for improvements at the Trans Center. And we received $800,000 commitment for body-worn cameras for the police department, all through the thanks of David Turch, Jamie Jones, and Mikey Fuentes working on those projects together. We did have a $1.5 million commitment to the Trans Center that was ultimately rescinded. That is separate from the $1 million that we have received a commitment on. And then, of course, David and Jamie have alluded to the current funding that is before the Congress now regarding Adam Schiff's $1 million for park development at the former police impound lot, and then the funding that was also committed for acquisition of a tiller truck. Those monies we are still waiting a commitment on.
Okay, that was going to be my follow-up. Since you said commitment, that doesn't mean the money's in the bank, and that's what I was going to get at. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions to my left? Comments? Anybody?
I just want to say hi to Mr. Jones and thank you for being here. I really appreciate the information. I won't pretend to understand 100% of what you said, but I do appreciate that you came here today to give us updates.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Definitely a big change compared to a year ago. I recall you saying that. So I'm going to try to say this where I think it's important for Montclair, but the federal government now, the power lays in the executive branch. I think Congress has really diluted their power. So the power is in the executive branch. That's where the decisions we are making impacts local government, the financing local government, the policies that affect local government and people who live in the local community. It could be for good or bad, but that's where it lays today. I think you agree with me, David. This is a very strong, powerful executive branch. And you said it also is if you want to get something, it's not like the old days where you just go to Congress. It also requires the involvement of the executive branch. One of the questions I want to ask you is Proposition 50, as you know, is in California. And if it passes, Montclair gets split into two cities. We'll have two reps, one north of the city, which would be Norma Torres, and then one south of the 10 freeway, which will be Sonoros, who gets elected. Are we better off being represented by one member of Congress for the entire city, or is there an advantage of having two members of Congress representing Montclair?
Depends. I'm so good at those weasel words. Have you noticed? Just try to avoid a direct answer. The answer is it just depends, and it depends on the relationship between the members. And historically, our activity has not broken down by party lines. So we've had, Councilmember Rue alluded to that, we've had cooperation across party lines by people who have, let's say, the interest in the same community. And I think at the moment I could use an example of Temecula, California, that's been represented by both Congressman Issa and Congressman Calvert, and they get along very well together, and that synergy works very well for that community. So it depends a little bit on the personalities of the members that are involved. It also depends on the committees on which they sit. Remember, the Congress is really committee-oriented. So if you're not on the committee, you're kind of an outsider looking for favors. But in any event, if that's as close an answer as I can come, depends on personalities.
Okay.
Some work really well, others not so much.
Okay, well, we'll see how that goes if it passes tomorrow. which probably will. And then you brought up earlier, I think, going to DC to lobby in 26. That would probably be a great opportunity if there is going to be two members representing Montclair to go visit both of them at that time. So what I'd like to do is, I do want to go this spring. I think this is a good opportunity to go because we now know better on how the administration functions along with Congress. Excuse me? How members of Congress operate along with the administration. And then we can advocate for the projects that we're seeking funding for. So what I like to do is, I know normally that when you may have more than two members show up. Diane, would it be advantageous for Brown Act purposes that maybe the council take action on exactly what we're going to be lobbying for in DC, especially asking for projects? So this way, if there's one or two members who are up there, at least we have something we know we're supposed to talk about and not get off the.
Well, you could certainly agendize an item for discussion about who would be going and what might be discussed. I don't see a problem with that.
Okay, so maybe that'd be a good thing. We have some on the agenda we take action on, and in this way, if there's more than two members that want to lobby, at least, we'll stay in the Brown Act spirit and know exactly what we're going to be lobbying. That's been approved by the council. So, Councilmember Rue.
Yes, in regard to if Proposition 50 passes, yes, Montclair as well as several other cities would have two members of Congress. But those members of Congress will participate in a June 2026 primary. From there, as we do, the top two will move to November. So if we were there in Washington, D.C. in February, March, April, May, whatever, we would still only have one member of Congress we would be dealing with. And it's been my experience in looking at this, having worked for a member of Congress at one time who actually was one of three for a city. If they work together well, you get 3 votes or 2 votes, and sometimes that can be advantageous. But let's get through tomorrow first and see what happens, and we can move from there.
Well, thank you very much. So, again, I'm concerned on what's current in D.C. that's affecting my residents here in Montclair in many aspects. Obviously, funding, immigration, specifically those two. There's probably some others as well. Obviously, the SNAP program is another one. The health, the affordable health care, the premiums going up, which is the main reason why DC now is shut down. That's my concern. The impact it has on my residents here in Montclair and impacts the city of Montclair. Again, I can't control a lot of that stuff. I'm not that powerful. However, I know if we go in a lobby, at least we can lobby the funding, the projects that we're asking for, and then we can continue to, Congressman No More Torres, I think it's been great to at least represent the city of Montclair and the concerns that residents of the city have raised here in the last, since January. I think she's done a good job. Again, she's one member of Congress. The Democrats don't have a whole lot of voice there. Probably another reason why they're doing the filibuster, because they want more of a voice. But that's it. I go back to Councilmember Rue. The two ideologies on the left and the right, the extreme left and extreme right, are becoming more powerful. And in the middle part, which is where I'm at, that's becoming weaker, which, in the history of Congress and the administration, it's been the middle is where the power is at. Seems like every year you come here and it gets worse and worse in DC. I remember when you first came here, it was the Tea Party movement when Barack Obama became president. It was the Tea Party at the time.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
could I interrupt you and just say, I don't want to take all the responsibility for it being worse and worse every year.
Oh, no, I'm not giving you that responsibility, but I just remember having a conversation maybe even 10 years ago, and there was shenanigans going on in DC. And you kind of wonder, and the mood of the American people. And if you go back to the 60s and 70s, I heard this, there was strife going on in this country, especially over Vietnam and well, Vietnam specifically, in the protest. Obviously, the public didn't have a whole lot of confidence in their national leaders at the time, but they had confidence in the institutions, the Supreme Court, the Department of Justice. They had confidence in the institutions. Today, that confidence in institutions is also in the toilet. So, but we're not here to discuss that. Anything else, my members of the council? Any questions, any comments do you have for Mr. Turch? Since he's on at the mic, go ahead, Mr. Lopez.
You shared that you were from Virginia, and tomorrow is no doubt, your state's a pivotal state, and all eyes, well, a good chunk of the country will be watching Virginia and New Jersey. And I personally would hope that your state would choose to win some and win some and win some more. So that's all I wanted to throw in there. You know what I'm getting at.
Okay. I believe if we have any public comments this time, discuss the workshop item. If not, we will have our regular council meeting at 7 p.m. for public comments, and we're adjourned.